Good day and night to everyone all over the world, our millions of viewers watching Dr. Joe's podcast. I've got a great chiropractor. I know I said that about the last 10, but he truly is a great chiropractor. Dr. Simon Kelly is in New Zealand, and we won't hold that against him, but he has been a friend for years, and I love him dearly, and I want to chat to him today about what depresses him and what excites him. Simon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe, great to see your smiley face. Great to be here. Great to have something to do. We're locked down in level 4 by the Gestapo here in New Zealand. And I think we're at about, I don't know, day 30 or something. So
excellent.
But, we're alive and well.
Where were you born, Simon?
In New Zealand, in Wellington, yeah.
In Wellington?
Yeah. And
so you didn't live, your brother lived in Australia, but you've always lived there, right?
I bounced around a bit. After I graduated, I ended up in England and Ireland. And
Did you?
Yeah, doing the locum thing and the associateship thing and the travel thing. And then I did a lot in Aussie, actually, in Melbourne and some in New South Wales.
Oh, I thought you did.
So I lived I spent about 4 years sort of blazing everywhere, which was great in my 20s. And
well, there you go. We've got plenty to talk about then. So what do you think over the years, what do you think has changed for you and what stayed the same in practice? What's your foundation that's never changed, and what have you kind of seen flurry into the profession? And if that's a terrible question, just tell me what's on your mind.
That's a great question. I think the thing that's always stayed the same is I've got 2 jokes in practice, and I use them.
I'm laughing already.
That was the first one.
They are funny. They are great jokes, I'm telling you. Tell me the joke.
And then, I think when I was working out whether to start a practice or not, I sort of bounced around for 4 years helping everyone else out. And then what I worked out is you didn't have to be good at everything. You just had to be really, really good at some things to have a bit of confidence behind you. So my thing would be, if you can adjust some things really, really well and own that, regardless of the technique, I think that's probably what stayed the same over the years. I've done probably tons of technique seminars and varied things around, but essentially I come back to the core, probably principles of what we were taught, and that's stick to the basics and don't overcook it.
So when you say adjust a couple of things very well, do you mean segments or conditions or what?
I think clinically, I reckon it's, I think it's not over adjusting people and in terms of in one visit. And I think it's adjusting with, if you're a manual adjuster, it's adjusting with a certain amount of depth. And I think that's probably the thing that stayed the same for me from a clinical perspective.
Can you tell me more about depth?
So, for example, depth of a toggle, depth of a cervical chair adjustment. If you think of, without beating up students, if you think of the difference between a student adjustment and someone who's been around a while, they feel different. They're often faster and deeper.
Right. And what do you think? So your fundamentals, what's changed though for you? What do you think's changed in practice then? Maybe nothing has changed. How long have you been in practice?
20 years. I think it's quite cool. You end up learning more things and coming back to the basics. So I've done pediatric diplomates. I've done all the
that's true.
I've done all sorts of cool things. You take the pediatric thing, for example, that was run by the ICR in the New Zealand College. It was cool, but it was tons of weekends. We had to go to Aussie a lot, which was fun. In the days you could go on planes. And I think we did about 18 or 20 weekends plus an exam and blah, blah, blah. And I think that once all that was said and done, what it taught you was probably how to communicate things better to parents. It didn't really teach you any flasher adjustments.
Are you involved with the college there?
Just got on the board, actually. So I don't teach there, but I just got on the board there. So
well, that's pretty major.
It's pretty cool. So just getting up to speed with all that. And that's only been in the last few weeks.
So yeah. So what's wrong with the profession?
What's wrong with the profession?
What's something you'd fix tomorrow?
I think a better question is what's right with the profession.
Go for it.
I think what's right is if you have a bunch of like-minded people with a high degree of certainty and want to serve lots of people, I think that serves us in good stead. Where we probably get very confused and aggro towards each other is the way we deliver that. In a nutshell.
What do we get aggro about?
My colour's better than your colour. You're doing it the wrong way. I want to add this to my cake. We should keep it as yeah.
But doesn't that add, as BJ wrote, doesn't conflict clarify?
Quite so.
Yeah.
Quite so. I mean, you're always going to get poles and extremes, and I guess the more entrenched you get on your side, the more entrenched the other folk will get as well. It's when it doesn't start looking like the profession that it looked like to me 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing.
I remember.
And at least if someone has a worldview that's different to mine, chiropractically, and they do it with vigor and passion, there's actually some strength in that. But if people go into it, this is probably what I've seen change the most since I graduated. It's if people have just fallen into it for a degree and then a job, and then not that passionate about how they do it, I think that's probably been its biggest weakness. And if you think in the days of, because you were a Palmer grad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think in the day what it took to study, people got off, they got on the boat, they got on the plane, they went a long way to get it done. So they had some conviction about them. And I think now, if anything, all around the world, including in New Zealand, that's my biggest concern is almost apathy and a lack of conviction for their ideas. And I just saw a survey a couple of days ago that came out about this COVID thing and the vaccines, and I can't repeat it, but some of the responses from New Zealand chiropractors were really concerning, which probably isn't how I would have thought as someone who looked at the world and held it from an inside out perspective rather than an outside in one. Let's just say that. So probably the biggest change I've seen in a not so great way would be, regardless of what pole you're at within chiropractic, it's the lack of conviction that people have had coming out of all sorts of schools, including New Zealand, is have people just got into this because it's another thing to do?
Yeah, that's the underlying theme of nearly every interview I've done. It seems like that we look at ourselves more like missionaries than employees, or, you know, when you got that missionary or that service attitude, that seems to be, you know, they say that innate intelligence and universal and all the philosophy of chiropractic that we learn, but I think the real underlying denominator, like you have said, is not so much your philosophy, but that you consider your work is your mission and your service to humanity, and that you may have sacrificed, as Jordan Peterson would say, choose your sacrifice. And so, like you said, we gave up this, and the old timers gave up that, and they caught a boat for 4 months to get to Palmer. And it seems that when the sacrifice is there and the commitment is there, that it makes the whole deal different, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're in it boots and all, and you've got skin in the game. So
that's it, skin in the game.
And I guess my own personal ride in that was I had to travel all the way 1 hour in a plane from Wellington to Auckland to study chiropractic. But I was in the school when it opened on the very first day. So we had the magic of having, 19 or 23 students in a room. And then we saw the school, double every year as they took on more people. And then during that time, the thing nearly folded 2 or 3 times.
Oh, so you were in that first intake?
Day one, yeah.
Holy moly.
So from my perspective, I'm super appreciative of getting out the other side, super appreciative of getting a I guess, a licensing certificate, because when we got out, we had to wait 3 or 4 months because we didn't have accreditation, and then we had to sit the RMIT exit exam.
Wow.
In lieu of the college not having its, accreditation yet. And then what happened was a little bit stressful, because 70% of us had to get 70% or more of another school's exam for us to then, get through, and away we went.
Now,
And
that's a bit of education history right there that I haven't heard, Simon. So you had to go to Melbourne?
No, they flew people over.
Right.
I think Tom was a lovely guy. I think Tom Molyneux was one of the guys who came over.
Molyneux, yeah.
But it was a bit tricky because, so for example, because our school was set up in a very sort of straight model, I think from a blanket perspective, we all failed extremity radiology because we never even learnt it, right? We learnt how to examine the spine, x-ray the spine. So I don't even think they asked us the questions. I think that was the case. But anyway, we got through, but it was pretty stressful. As a group, we got through, and then,
Yeah, Philip Eberl would know. I think Tom Molyneux was into radiology.
Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah. But, and I don't know if Dr. Kleinhans was the head of school, or Philip, whether it was Philip. I'll ask Philip to clarify.
Kleinhans, I actually applied to RMIT. He was the head of school. This is way back in the early 90s. And the reason I didn't get in is I left my enrollment form with my dear big brother in his house in Melbourne. And he goes, yeah, I'll drop it off for you. And of course, he dropped it off, but it was the day after it was due. So, so I kind of missed out on a year, but it all was meant to be, because I ended up in Auckland, and it was a pretty fun ride in the end.
Yeah, well, I would not speak to Brian anymore for that problem, that little lapse in.
No, it all worked out well.
Yeah. So, what else is on your mind in terms of the future of the profession? You've got a hand in. You're on the board of trustees, is it, of the college?
Yeah, I think to your point before, I think if it's going to go the distance, not just an institution, but if it's going to last and grow and expand, it's not just a volume of chiropractic you put out, but it is a quality. And so I've got this filter. I've been looking at graduates for a while, because I've had a few associates over the years, and that is, if I could pick up a Joe Arano or a Billy Joel or whoever else comes out of a chiropractic school and drop them in a new country, and there was no chiropractic there, would it last? Would it get going? And so if you think about it, they've got to be able to convince one person that it's good for them, and start adjusting them, and then recruit more and more and more. And people often think it's an extrovert v an introvert thing, it's a male v female thing, and it's not. It's does someone have the gumption to make it stick in that community? Because if you inherently think it's good for people, you want to spread the word.
Yeah,
you really will. And given our reach in most countries is piddly,
I know.
There's lots to do.
There's so many people without chiropractic.
Quite so. And without contradicting myself, I don't think we need more chiropractors and more chiropractic colleges. We need people who sincerely want to, touch people and make a difference. I just caught up with a guy a few days ago, cool guy. He's actually in true lockdown in New Zealand at the moment, because he's doing his 14 days, in a shitty airport hotel. And he's just come back. He was an old patient of mine, and his mum, by nature, he's an introvert. He was a top cyclist in his younger days, and then he was a patient of mine, and then he chose to study. But his mum was really, really nervous about this, her boy going to study, because and she said this to me at the time, because he's not as outgoing as you, and he's not much, all these various reasons. And I went, look, just go to this open day and have a look. So this was a wee while ago. So she went to the college open day with her son, had a look, and she met someone called Dr. Graham Dobson, who was part of the tour, right?
You know Graham, yes.
Graham. I mean, he's a living legend.
Yeah.
And her point to me when she came back was, meeting that guy gave this mother certainty that this might be the career for her son, because he was the quiet, non-spoken type in her eyes. Now, as it turns out, this young man fundraised at college, was the top graduate, And the reason why it was cool catching up with him just the other day when he's all locked up in isolation was he's just come back from practicing in Europe. He had, as a new grad, he's been out only 2 or 3 years, he had to learn a new language. He ended up seeing about 300 odd people a week, training staff, doing the business, like advancing chiropractic in that country as a new graduate. And that was from someone whose mum was concerned he didn't have the goods because he wasn't an outspoken person.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So my eyes is if you can plug people into a program, no matter where it is in the world, get them out at the other end, and then sprinkle them around the world, that I think will make a massive dent.
Yeah, that's a nice thought, actually. Yeah, very, very nice thought. And
I think that's it's a slightly different way of looking at it, as opposed to you got to teach this technique, that technique, et cetera, et cetera. My other take on that is most of the programs are just overstuffed with curriculum. And if I think about what the guy who looks after my kids at the moment, our Manny, he's about to finish chiropractic school, lockdown pending in the next sort of 3 or 4 months. And I look at the content of the technique they've got to learn, and it's so many topics. And I think, to the credit of our program, even though what I thought was light going through compared to other colleges, because I didn't have a perspective, it was actually pretty solid because they didn't teach too many things, but what they taught really well. So, for example, I can remember in the early days of us being in student clinic, someone could have come in with sciatica, a bad tummy, they farted a lot, they looked like Joe Arano, whatever it was, no matter what their problem, you could only for the first few months adjust either C1 or C2 if it showed up. And so we learned pattern work early on.
Oh, wow.
And we learned to trust the process of the nervous system clearing the body out.
And
in some respects, I almost think I was probably a more wholesome practitioner in those early days with no experience than I was when I got let loose straight out of college, because I probably adjusted too many segments relative to how I was taught. And then the level of guys who taught us in clinic, I wrote a book on it years ago. I worked out on average they had 24 and a half years of clinical experience on average. So some had 35, some had 20, versus a lot of clinic supervisors now have just been out a few years and they're imparting their place. So we were blessed with all that certainty. And that's because we were little, and the people that were there at the start were highly, highly committed to the cause.
Yeah. Well, that's tremendous, mate. And so as a board member, do you have much contact with students, or you just run the place? How do you see that?
I'll be able to tell you in time to come, because my appointments only just came through a couple of weeks ago.
So you haven't been on the board before?
No.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Okay. And so now I know you and Brian are chiropractic, part of the chiropractic family. Do you have any other family members who are in the profession or not?
We do. We have an Uncle Brian, Palmer grad, who just retired after 46 years in practice.
Oh, where did he work?
He had a great practice in Wellington for years.
Okay.
And years. And he has 6 kids, 2 of which, in fact, he's got a set of twins. The first one out has the initials DD, and the second son out has the initials BJ. And DD, whose name is actually David Daniel Kelly, he became a chiropractor with me. So, and then his younger sister, Emma, became a chiropractor too. So I think there's 5 of us that we know of.
Oh, good.
The other stragglers floating around. So
yeah. Well, it's been great chatting with you, mate. What other thoughts are on your brain before we run away?
I want to share this with you. This was just delivered to me this morning. Are you in lockdown as well over there? Yeah.
Oh, no. But I can still work.
Have you seen these things floating around? Now, believe it or not, that actually has water in it, but we're currently in level 4. I just thought that was the coolest thing.
My Croatian patient bought me a bottle of rakia, and it's this clear rocket fuel smelling substance, and it looks like what's in your glass. So I don't believe you.
It's 12 lunch, I promise you. Hey, Joe, great chatting.
Simon, it's great. I hope that I can see you. I'm due for another visit to the college. I've been there 3 or 4 times, and every time it's been wonderful. I've spoken maybe twice there. So let me know how it goes there. We love you very much, our New Zealand cousins, and we will catch up with you soon, Simon Kelly.
Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for your work.